Russian democratic opposition is looking to Ukraine because it's quite a serious precedent for the Russian opposition. But what is the main point in all this story? We must differ Russian opposition as a political force, as a political movement, and a civil society movement, which is also very active right now, especially in the context of protests in Moscow this summer, or different kind of civil protests in different parts of Russia. For instance, in the far north of Russia, in Arkhangelsky region, where people are protesting against landfills. So, in that sense, both these forces are trying to understand what is happening in the world, and inter alia in Ukraine. And Ukraine is a good example that everything is possible, as Zelensky said after the victory in these presidential elections this year. So, in that sense, this is a good example, but we can't implement the same story in Russia right now using any kind of political forces because we don't have normal democracy, normal elections in Russia, for the moment at least. So it's kind of an example. This is a dream for the Russian opposition which couldn't be implemented for the moment. The Kremlin hasn't any interest to disengage from Ukraine. There are several reasons. The main reason is that this is a good field for the irritation of the West, for the continuation of different games around the Donbass, for different trade with the West on this ground of hybrid war with Donbass. But at the same time, Donbass, or eastern Ukraine, economically this is a burden for Kremlin. So the situation is extremely contradictory. On the one hand, Kremlin has to support these territories socially and economically. On the other hand, Kremlin doesn't want to stop the story. The desire is to freeze the conflict in order to continue this political game with the West. So in that very context, we have to analyze the situation with norma deformant and indecisiveness of Kremlin, whether to allow to Ukraine to continue these negotiations or not. So, contradictory situation.